Hi, I'm Hope.
Hi, I'm MaryAnne.
I'm Aneesha.
Aneesha.
And this is our Impacts of Climate Change project, Human Population Displacement.
The World Health Organization defines displaced people as people who have had to leave their homes as a result of a natural, technological, or deliberate event. This includes internally displaced people who move within the country and refugees who have to cross international borders. Climate change is the root cause of the increase in natural disasters that have displaced millions of people. Climate change in itself does not prompt human population displacement since it's a global phenomenon. However, what happens to certain environments as a result of climate change does. Climate change causes big increases in the frequency of droughts, flooding, landslides, decrease in crop yields, storms, submerging of land, among other things. These things will eventually happen so often in certain regions that it will be impossible to live there, forcing the displacement of huge amounts of people.
So, population displacement is caused by a multitude of climate-related factors such as warming trends, extreme temperatures, drying trends, extreme precipitation, damaging cyclones, storm surges, rising sea level, ocean acidification, and carbon dioxide fertilization. And so these are some pictures of locations that are impacted by these factors. So there are three common types of impact, and that's drought, flooding, and rising sea level. And so all three of these contribute to a reduction in crop yields. And so droughts can not provide enough water for the crops, and then flooding and rising sea levels can overwater crops, and this threatens the food security of the people that live there. And flooding and rising sea level can also affect the shelter availability for the people that live there because flooding can cause damage to properties such as homes, and rising sea levels can cause destructive erosion that can be unsafe for properties. And so all of these factors make it really difficult for someone to live in these locations and sometimes impossible. And this leaves people with no other choice but to leave their homes.
So the question becomes, how does human population displacement affect people and wildlife? Displaced humans are exposed to climate extremes, which negatively affects their health as they look for a new place to live. This often leads them to be more susceptible to infectious diseases as malaria, but it also affects them psychologically as these refugees are also more susceptible to being psychologically distressed, and of having other mental illnesses. Some countries do not actually recognize climate refugees as legal refugees, so displaced peoples are left unprotected and face discrimination. Countries that have higher amounts of climate change refugees are often at risk for more civil conflict as citizens and refugees compete for resources. And these conflicts can also lead to civil war, which creates more and more refugees, not just climate refugees. But human population displacement also affects wildlife. Cities must accommodate more people as displaced people move, expanding their city at the cost of ecosystems. For example, the one that we know is deer. As cities expand with more people moving in, we encroach more and more onto their habitat.
So the question now becomes, what are some expected changes? Since the amount of individuals killed and displaced by the weather-related incidents has increased by about 250%, government agencies are implementing set plans. To combat the rising concerns of population displacement, many global organizations such as the International Rescue Committee and Regional Durable Solutions Secretariat, also known as RDSS, has decided to formulate a plan. These organizations have conducted environmental analysis in order to adapt effective solutions to aid such disasters. Demanding challenges are first decided and presented Based on these challenges, 3 different term outcomes are introduced. They're short, medium, and longer. And the last step of this plan is to summarize the efforts provided in the previous steps. Use these to address the overarching goal to aid the disaster. Refugees and global organizations are working together to implement continued efforts in combating climate change. As we have seen from the previous issue stated, rapid population distribution can lead to decreased adaptability and global stability. If human population displacement is not addressed, then it will continue to impact the social, economic, and political foundations of regions worldwide. To improve these efforts must be imposed on by government agencies who will provide humanitarian aid. Continued efforts from other climate change effects have been implemented to support displaced populations. They include reforestation, providing persons with food training, building shelters, and easing local integration. Organizations are also hosting roundtable discussions regarding the rights of displaced persons to focus efforts. International organizations are heavily involved in improving national and international legal policy and institutional frameworks. Their plans are to secure housing, land, and property rights for displaced populations, but to do so, they must go through legal actions in order for these persons to gain legal citizenship in that region. Many regions are vulnerable to increased population numbers due to climate displacements, so they are now hosting discussions and providing reports that track the relation between climate change and displaced communities, which will then be used to provide evidence to integrate these populations. Government officials worldwide are starting programs and projects that restore the livelihoods of migrated populations. In order to do so, officials need to gain the trust of their citizens. They are doing this by starting to incorporate local opinions on how citizens want to see these changes addressed. And government officials are also developing strategies to rebuild these communities. Overall, these officials agree that we should start investing now in preparing to mitigate future protection needs and prevent further climate-caused displacement. So we would like to thank you guys for viewing our presentation today. And here are our references.